Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. We are back once again, and this is episode 157 with Shachar Boussani. I had a great chat with Shachar. We talked about so many things, including being inspired on a trip to London and deciding to go all in on music and move to a big music city. We talk about his journey in music, moving to Los Angeles, trying out post-production and film scoring, and then eventually opening a recording studio, mixing music, and most recently working for big-time mixer Bob Horn. We talk about making music just for fun, setting goals, and going all in on the things that inspire you. We talk about working for Bob Horn and lessons he's learned from him, including some low-end voodoo magic. We also talk about drum recording, drum tones, figuring out how to mix on headphones, separating the elements of a mix. We get into bass, Motown, and energy distribution theory, bouncing stems, his competitive drive, and the importance of finding a mentor. So this was a great chat. We really talked about so many things. I think you're going to love it too. So with all that to say, here's my chat with Shachar Boussani coming up right here on Secret Sonics. Hey everyone, if you're anything like me, you often find yourself looking for business insight in podcasts. And I'm sure many of you are also into meditation and reflection to help better understand yourself. Former guest of the show, Carl Bonner, decided to launch a podcast that brings these two elements together. It's a series of guided self-reflection exercises, but specifically for freelance creatives like you and me, focusing on the struggles we face as we try to grow our businesses, while also finding more happiness in the work that we do. It's called Thanks for Thinking. It's definitely an unusual format, but if you want to grow your self-awareness, find deeper career satisfaction, and make more money, then I think this podcast might be for you. Experience it for yourself and click the link in the show notes below. You're listening to Secret Sonics, a podcast exploring the creative side of music production. Join us weekly for honest conversations with real-world music producers and audio professionals. Hello, and welcome back to Secret Sonics. I'm your host, Ben Wallach. My guest today is Shachar Boussani. Shachar is a Los Angeles-based mixing engineer, spending his days mixing records out of the Echo Bar recording studios in North Hollywood, California. With recent credits such as BTS, Loop Fiasco, Danny Elfman, Atlantic Records, RCA Records, and many more, Shak is well-versed in many different genres and styles of production, from pop, R&B, and hip-hop to folk, rock, and orchestral music. As a mixing engineer, Shak believes that experiencing a diverse range of musical styles is crucial to learning how to meet a song where it's at and serving it best for what it is, rather than trying to make it into something it's not. Former guest of the show, DK Waddell, introduced me to Shachar, who I invited onto the show, and he's graciously agreed to do. So with all that to say, welcome to Secret Sonics, Shachar.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be chatting with you finally.
Yeah, we've been schmoozing on and off, and then the audience doesn't know this yet, but we just had a second baby, which has been totally crazy.
Yeah.
And so
I
keep on, thank you. I keep on postponing doing episodes, and I was like, no, I need to get back in the hot seat. But maybe I've taken on too much. But anyways, finally reached out, and you agreed to do this last minute, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your story. I know we kind of have inverse experiences in the fact that you left Israel to move to America, and I moved to Israel around the same time. So we kind of crossed paths in the air, so to speak.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you end up in, I guess, also tell us a little bit about music in your life and how that kind of led you to what you're doing today in America, mixing records.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I grew up in Israel, and I really got into music. I was always a really big fan of music before even realizing what that really means, because I don't come from a particularly musical family. There is some certain hidden talent in the family, but no one really pursued it seriously. It was never ingrained in me in any kind of way, but I was always a big fan. I remember at 8 years old having the Whitney Houston CD, and it was that and Guns N' Roses. Those are the two CDs that I owned myself at around 7 or 8 years old.
Would you say that's the sonic spectrum of what you're working on these days?
You could say it's pretty wide, huh? Yeah, but then it wasn't until I was about 15, at which point I had two really close friends. One of them had been playing guitar for a while, and the other was just getting into music. He started playing a little bass, and then moved over to drums, and I think he connected with drums more, and then they would start jamming together, and I would always just really enjoy hanging out with them and just sitting in when they would jam together. not even thinking about the possibility like, oh, I can maybe join on another instrument or something like that. Until one of them, the drummer, was like, hey, how about you start playing bass and like start playing with us? And I was just like, wait, what? That's like a thing? Yeah. And that's kind of how it started. So I started learning bass, and there was one guy that we knew, like a brother of another friend who played bass. So he taught me some stuff. Yeah, it kind of took over from there. Shortly after, I started realizing that I have some like other ideas in my head that are not just bass, meaning like I was getting full arrangements in my head of like what music could be. But really, I only knew how to play bass. So for a minute, I would use the bass as all the different instruments. Like I would tap on it to make drums. I would play really up high to play the melody, play a bass line as, you're supposed to on a bass. But yeah, that's all I knew how to do. Slowly started learning how to play chords on a keyboard, how to strum a guitar, and started developing that. And yeah, over, I guess, the next 3 years, kept developing that and working with other people and understanding what that's all about. And yeah, and then at one point I moved with a couple of friends. We lived in London for 3 months, just wasting our time, but it was amazing. And it was a really, really interesting experience. We were really poor. Yeah, I remember this one time going to the music store over there, the Virgin, I forget what they call it. They have like the Virgin
Virgin Records
record store, and then like downstairs they had the music instruments store.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. So I remember going there, and I just had some time to kill and picked up a bass and just started playing, not realizing there was like someone standing behind me just watching me the whole time. And after a while, I put the bass down, and he approached me and was like, yeah, I really like your playing, and blah, blah, blah. And turned out he was a producer. Nothing ended up happening from that. I didn't really work with him or anything, but that was the first time that a complete stranger was like interested in something I was doing. And to me, that was like a, whoa, like there may actually be something there,
Right.
And experiencing that in like a big international metropolitan kind of city kind of helped me realize there are very big opportunities outside of Israel that I would like to explore. And it was my last day in London that I was like just sitting on the bed, just like thinking and like, going through things in my head. And I just had this realization that like, this is it. Like, I don't really want to stay in Israel. Like, I want to experience this all the time. Like I want to be in a big city with a lot of music, have these like infinite opportunities, or what seems like infinite opportunities if I just able to seize them. In London, I wouldn't have had like the legal papers to stay and work and all that, but I do have that for the United States because my mom is originally from New Jersey. So I've always had dual citizenship. So that was the decision, and that was the last day in London. I flew back home and told my parents I am not staying. And
that was probably pretty hard for them to hear.
Probably, yeah. No, they're really good about it, and I think, especially at least for my mom, she herself, like I said, she was raised in New Jersey, and she chose to move to Israel when she was 22, I believe. So I think she definitely...
Same age I was, by the way.
Yeah. Right. So she did a very similar thing to you. She went to volunteer at a kibbutz during one of the wars and ended up staying. Yeah. So I know that she kind of got it. Like, I'm sure it wasn't easy, but she also understood because she went through the same thing in a different way.
Yeah.
So then I stayed and worked my ass off for about 7 months trying to save every shekel that I could to try to make this move happen. Meanwhile, I was looking at where in the United States should I move. I wasn't set on LA from the very beginning. For a moment, I had Philadelphia, in my head because that's really close to where my family is, but it's still like a big, cool city. I always liked it. But then the thought of just landing in a new country and being like, okay, cool, I need an apartment, I need a job, all alone was like very overwhelming. Like, how do I do that? So basically what I decided is, let's find a school. Let's find some kind of audio/music school. And that might just kind of soften the landing a little bit and give me some kind of structure to fall into and figure things out from there. And probably a little extra support from my parents. So I was looking at different schools and eventually found Musicians Institute in Hollywood. And that seemed like a really good place to go. So that's what I did.
Nice.
So that was September of 2007 that I moved.
So going on 15 years.
Exactly. Yeah. Next month it's going to be 15 years.
Wow. So you basically moved to LA and never looked back.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Nice.
It was pretty clear pretty quickly that this is it. Like I'm getting the stimulus that I was craving so much, and as wild and weird as LA can get and unpleasant at times as an artist, as a mixing engineer, producer, whatever I did along the way, it just felt right. Like I was getting that stimulus, like I said.
Yeah. LA seems to be the place where it's at. It's like everybody ends up in LA at some point.
Yeah, and then eventually move out of LA.
Yeah, eventually, maybe. I just spoke with John Greenham, who mastered the Billie Eilish record and a lot of other great records. And he was telling me how Eric Valentine convinced him to stay in LA.
Oh, wow.
Or to go to LA, because it's like, if you're a hat maker, you got to end up going to a place where people are making hats, people talk hats, people buy hats, people wear hats.
Right.
And it's like LA is just it. That's where it is, And for better or worse, it seems to be the place that people end up. And it's interesting, especially if you want to specialize. It seems like from the people I've spoken with, if you want to, like, say, become just a mixer, being in a place like LA could be really, really helpful because there's just so much music that you could really kind of niche into one thing.
Right.
And if you're in like a smaller city, you kind of have to do a little bit of everything to stay afloat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There's just so much here, so much opportunity. Like that, the way I think of it, even outside of music, it's just LA is the kind of city that everything is available for you all the time, everywhere. It's like you want to buy a certain snack that you like at 3 a.m. There's probably a place to go for that. You know what I mean? It's like it's available.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of translates to music too. There's like everything is happening here. Like you said, like you get to just like choose what to mess around with, what to play with.
Right. So walk me through kind of your journey from like LA to like mixing. And I know you're also working with Bob Horn, who's an incredible mixer. Tell us a little bit about what that transition was, what that journey was.
Right. So when I first moved to LA, I was still more into writing music. Not necessarily songwriting. I was never good with lyrics or singing or anything like that. But just writing music. I suppose one could call it either like instrumental music or like film score type stuff. So I was really interested in that. And so that's mostly what I did at Musicians Institute too. I did their what they then called the recording artist program. They also have like an engineering program, but that was the recording artist program for more like singer-songwriter, instrumentalists, and stuff like that. And that was cool. Like I enjoyed school, but ultimately it felt like it was moving a little too slowly for me. It wasn't stimulating quite enough. And I found that I was like between classes, just messing around on my laptop on my own time. I was teaching myself what next week they were going to teach me, So it was moving a little slowly for me, but it was cool. They taught a lot of basics, a lot of good information. But then after that, through another person that I met at school, I got an internship at a studio. It was one of like the small private studios, not one of the big names. But I learned a lot. It was a really cool tracking room, a lot of live musician kind of stuff rather than, making beats. Mm-hmm. They had a Neve console, so I got to learn all that.
Wow.
And that was like really the school for me. that was true school. And so I was doing that for a while. Meanwhile, also on the side, like on my own time, I was writing, just continue to write music and writing score for film.